And let me thank his team, because I know that no man is an island, and that it took a lot to pull this off here in New York City. And I want to welcome everyone to Indie Week. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be here just to share a few thoughts with you this afternoon. As has been stated, I'm Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke, and I represent the 9th District of New York. For those of you who have had an opportunity to travel across our great city, it's the borough of Brooklyn. And if you know where the, yes, Brooklyn in the house. Brooklyn's always in the house. And those of you who know the Barclays Center, my district begins there on my northern end and runs south. So the Barclays Center is on Atlantic Avenue. My district goes south to a community called Sheepshead Bay, which is where the Atlantic Ocean comes in. So a quick way to remember it is that my district runs from Atlantic to the Atlantic. I thought about what I would share with you today. The first thing I want to share with you is that I'm left-handed. And why do I say that? Because we all know left-handed people are extremely creative. I'm in a room. Did I get an amen over here? There are a whole host of creative people in this room today, and I think that's what draws us here to talk about the independent music movement. And I guess another piece that I want to share with you was that in my teenage years, I was really caught up in the whole club scene and disco music, so much so that I wanted to be a DJ. So I began to gather crates and crates and crates of music that I loved. You know, growing up in a household where there was a real appreciation for music, it's just been a part of my life. And luck would have it that I get a scholarship to Oberlin College. And Oberlin College, for those of you who may be aware, has a conservatory of music for classically trained and jazz musicians. And so my life has just been filled, as you can see, with music. And I thought that for those of you who are in this space, you're in a great space right now. I serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House of Representatives, which has the jurisdiction for innovation, technology. We look at the convergence of communication technology. We look at the platforms that are currently available for creatives like yourselves. And we try to create as much policy to enable that innovation to be unleashed. So when you think about things like SoundCloud, and you think about all the other platforms that we can avail ourselves of these days, whether it's YouTube or even just talking to Alexa so that she can pull up your latest tune, technology is playing a big role, but it is also enabling people to be extremely entrepreneurial. And that's the space that I think that you all occupy. You are the creatives who, through your own creativity, your own innovation, can touch the world. And we have so many more tools today than we've had in the past. You know, we think about the pioneers, and I mean, we can go back centuries, but in terms of the recording industry, we think about those who were there at the very beginning and the challenges that they faced in being able to get their talents out and recognized, and to be able to maintain ownership of that was an extreme challenge for them. To this very day, there are folks who have still not been compensated for the work that they put out into the public domain. Others were able to capitalize off of that. And I think that that's a lesson learned for this generation, that you can own your own content, you can be the master of your own destiny, and that we are in a space where it's actually appreciated, where people are pretty frowned upon when they exploit the creative talents of others and profit from it. And what my goal is to make sure that in Congress we give recognition to those of you who are out there and really lifting our lives, enriching our culture with your talents. And the space that we can create in Washington through policy, through regulation, to enable that is what I'm interested in doing. I think that it's really, really important for this next generation to be able to see you all in the spaces that you occupy, be able to know that they can follow in your footsteps, and that independent music makers, independent creatives, have a very special and beloved place in our society. So my first album, I remember the name of it, but I know it was the Jackson 5. And I had to save up a whole lot of allowance to get that album. You know, it meant that I had to clean up the house. I was like the Lemon Pledge sister. I had to dust everything. I had to, you know, just make sure that I can build my catalog. Today, if you have access to a laptop, to a PDA, to Alexa, you can download just about anything. The important thing about downloading, however, to me, is the attribution of that work to the originators of the work. And I think that if there's anything that you can come away with from here today, it's making sure that you're engaging with lawmakers, whether it's at your local levels, whether it's at your state levels, because it's important to have sort of an army of support. Because there are a lot of folks, as we all know, who profit from being able to ride the coattails of others who are really doing the work. And my hope is that we, again, are giving proper attribution to those of you who are laboring in the fields. And I talked about being a DJ and having my crates of music, and it was important to me because there was nothing that didn't happen in my life that didn't have a soundtrack to it. And when you think about it, given the society that we're in, that soundtrack is so very important. It motivates us, it elevates us, it encourages us in times of distress and trouble. Right now, we need some really great albums. Because Donald Trump is doing a job. And I just keep hearing this type of music in Washington, D.C. We need that, you know, the victory music right now because it's a challenging time. So you think about how far we've come. You know, I talked about my crates of albums. They were the 12-inch albums. Who remembers the 12-inch? Okay, I see there's a generational divide in the room. We went from 12-inch to, you know, boom boxes to cassette players. My dad had a reel-to-reel. Anyone know about a reel-to-reel in here? Yeah. Okay, all right. 8-track. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, we've been through it all. We've been through the MP3s, we've been through the CDs, and now we're at a point where we can stream not only our music, but we can make it visual, we can make it real for those that we encounter, those that we want to share our talents with, those that have a desire to engage us in a unique and special way. So I'm really passionate about music and helping artists in my role as a Congresswoman, because again, you all create the soundtrack of life. And depending on, you know, what may be going on at a specific time, within each and every album, within each and every musician, is a way to chronicle that, is a way to give us a placeholder in time that reminds us of, you know, what we were doing, how we were feeling, who we were engaged with. It's amazing how much music plays such an integral part in the lives of people around the world. And again, with technology, there is no limit. We oftentimes are somewhat myopic in terms of the U.S. civil society, but music is worldwide. And so when we think about it in that regard, it becomes even more important that we are putting up the safeguards for our intellectual properties, knowing that there'll be others who will enjoy, but not want to necessarily give back to the creator of the music. So as we recognize how technology is impacting our artists, it's important that as we deal with this evolution in music, that we engage our lawmakers. Because one of the things that I have recognized in Washington, D.C. is that there are those who believe in real justice and equity, and then there are those who believe in exploitation and profit at no cost. And when we think about each individual and all that you put into making music for yourselves, for the world, it is important that we hear from you in Washington, D.C. You know, I know that oftentimes creative folk don't like to get political, but you would be surprised at all of the regulations we have in place that impact your lives. And without your input, without your shaping and giving guidance to the process, unintended and sometimes very intended consequences will occur. And so I'm here today to encourage you to engage at the federal level in particular, where so many of these regulations are being debated, are being discussed, and are being put into effect. Whether it's copyrights and making sure that your right to your own intellectual property is protected, or it's, you know, looking at what technology does in terms of how people download your offerings, how people engage you on the internet, how people rate your work, and whether in fact it's fair and it's just. All of that takes place within a very short space. And you are in the midst of your careers, and what we want to do is give space for growth and for development, not for stifling, not for sidelining, not for blacklisting, not for blackballing, all of which takes place in the industry today, but that you will have that space to really make an impact, not only in your respective communities, but on this nation, that you are truly representative of what we frame as the American dream, because you have brought your talents to bear in a way in which it has been a benefit, not only to yourselves, but to our nation. So I'm a technology wonk. I was sharing with my staff about the fact that I grew up in that period of time where I was fascinated by science fiction, sci-fi. And it's amazing how much of what I saw as sci-fi in sort of my formative years are actually what we're living today. And when you think about that, the sky is the limit. Because indeed, right now, we are able to do so many things through automated opportunities, through artificial intelligence, through augmented intelligence, that even your music, the sounds that you're able to make now, the sounds that you're able to mimic now, it's innumerable in terms of how you'll be able to generate rhythms and beats and tones and voices all coming together to make new music. And so whatever we can do to make sure that those tools are freely available to you is really important. I have been a great proponent of net neutrality, and I think that that is critical for creative people in particular, because if we have, for those who don't know, net neutrality is the ability to have a free and fair and just internet. That there are no fast lanes, there are no slow lanes, there's no monetizing it in a way in which it gives a preference to who's able to post, to distribute, to be searched for and found in our search engines. And when you think about it, for independent musicians like yourselves, it's critical that in the competitive market, you're just as able to reach the market as any other individual, whether they are, extremely wealthy or they're not. And that's what net neutrality brings to us. So I hope that as that debate continues, you will all be out there and be a part of making sure that we keep the internet free, fair, and just, because that can be sort of a platform that will catapult you worldwide. And I'm sure many of you are already on your way. You're supposed to clap for that. In Washington, I established something called the Multicultural Media Caucus, because I saw a need to make sure that as creatives come to the fore, it's an inclusive space that brings in everyone's talent, everyone's abilities. And for too long, no disparaging remarks for white males, but we've been very dominant in that space. And we want to make sure that everyone who has talent is able to get a fair and just and equitable exposure in the media. And so our caucus is co-chaired by two other individuals, a woman named Judy Chu from California and another gentleman named Tony Cardenas from California. And we have had an opportunity to meet with tech giants, meet with some of the cable, radio, and really talk to them about what does inclusivity look like. And is it just about who you promote, or is it who's in the decision-making spaces? And we think it's important that, from the, as they say, the streets to the suites, that it's reflective of who we are as a civil society, so that we don't miss opportunities to engage in a very meaningful way the creative community that is really very, very diverse. Some of my most impressionable music happens to come from the island nation of Jamaica. My parents were born in Jamaica, and I'm that American kid that they used to, you hear people talk about they send their children down south. Well, I was sent south of the border, and I remember the origins of reggae music and ska music, and just how it was created in towns and villages. And I remember being here in the U.S. wondering why we weren't listening to the same music. And then all of a sudden, with technology, again, the exposure, the opening up, we're able to see music from around the world. And that is, that is all part of the technological revolution that we've all been engaged in. So with changing times, we know music is received and it is distributed because we have this seamless sort of alter universe that we can manipulate, we can use to make sure that we are engaged in a way in which we can bring our work to the world. So who represents us through our songs definitely matters. Whether it's rap music, whether it's country, whether it's R&B, whether it's alternative rock, all of these genres are so specific and so much of who we are, so representative of our experience as Americans. And it's an import that so many around the world just clamor for. So I want to encourage you today, as you move about Indie Week, to think about how we can be helpful, we being the United States Congress, in next steps in unleashing the ultimate potential for creative beings like yourself to be able to get out there, get engaged, be celebrated most of all, that we can be knowledgeable of the work that you're doing, and that we can make sure that each and every one has the ability to hit the marketplace, be successful, and if that's not your ultimate goal, create those opportunities for others. Create those festivals in our communities where one can learn what it is to be a musician, where one can learn what it is to appreciate music. And oftentimes, unfortunately, within various communities, there is no exposure to music appreciation. And so you all have a lot of avenues that you can go down to make sure that, again, your talents are out front, that they are centered in a way in which we can all embrace it as Americans. I'm really proud to be here with you today, and I'm really excited about what Indie Week means for New York City, and indeed for our nation. I want to thank you once again for inviting me to address you, and I don't know, it was a keynote address, but if there are any questions that anyone has about what's going on in Washington, D.C. I'll have the mic.
And could you tell us what's the goals and expand a little more about that?
Sure. The Multicultural Media Caucus, our goal is to be able to really expand on diversity and inclusion, making sure that we are putting a bird's eye view onto particularly the conglomerates, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what it means in terms of opportunities for everyone. We know that there is there's a hard and fast way of doing business that we've not cracked the code on for generations now. Our goal is to crack the code so that creatives like you in this room will have opportunities that generations before you didn't have.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what are the strategies and tactics that are being used to do that?
Well, that's the great thing about being in Congress, because all of these companies and corporations need us for something. And what we do is we typically shame a lot. There's a lot of shaming that goes on. And, we also bring together sort of folks in the creative space with the corporations so that they can't say, well, we can't find any. That's always the excuse. We can't find any. And we said, well, here are some smaller companies, here are some smaller businesses that you can partner with to expand on that. And there are a lot of companies that are actually very interested. And so we try to make those matches. We're constantly speaking about new spaces. And what's happening too is these companies are all getting consumed by mega companies, right? So they're afraid, they want to hold on to their business model. And I'm saying, well, you got to get ahead of that. And the one way of doing that is bringing something new, special, and innovative to the market. And one way of doing that is by opening your doors and opening your eyes to creatives that you had not engaged previously. And so we have a lot of workshops on the Hill. We bring in the execs, whether they're from record companies, from cable companies, from tech firms, just to have those conversations. And then we shame them. We say, this year we had this conversation, these were your numbers, what are your numbers looking like this year? So it's an ongoing dialogue. And our hope is that, we'll, again, crack that code. Follow-up question.
Yeah, just one other question. I'm just curious about the experience of working in government. Does music interact with you in your work day at all? For
me, yes. Not for everyone. I take some time to use my Alexa. And there's a calming effect when you put on some Bob Marley. It just does something to you, right? The Hill is very, very, very dry. It's very dry. Every now and then, my colleague from Ohio will bring in the folks from, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and everyone will go crazy over it because we'll have some music. We actually have some musicians who are congressmen. So, every now and then we get a treat, but it tends to be pretty dry. Yes.
Over the last couple of years, Brand USA, who's the tourism, for those who don't know, is the tourism body basically representing the US, both internally and externally, they did a huge campaign around music. They did an IMAX film about it. When a government goes to the right, pretty much anywhere in the world, the first thing that gets cut are music and arts.
Yes.
And in this climate, that was amazing to see that there was still, and I realised that point before it came earlier, but it was great to see such a push around music by the tourism body that is run out of DC. So my question is, what does something like that do to people in Congress who maybe don't understand the benefits of music on not just on a social level, but also on an economic level as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a major impact. We have a number of folks who come to Capitol Hill, and that's why I keep engaging you all, because your voices really do count. You know, imagine if you amplify what that tourism agency is doing. It really it impacts members because they're concerned about what? The next election. You know, an everyday American is saying that this is important to me, and they're bringing everyone along with them. Then the budget for the National Endowment of the Arts doesn't get cut, right? We amp it up, as a matter of fact. Then, you know, we look at ways in which we are really dealing with music as an industry and a growth industry versus, passing whim of the people on the left. You know, the lefties always get blamed for everything. But it's engagement, and that's the thing about democracy. You know, I think there's a lesson that we need to learn, and it's that democracy is not it's not a noun, it's a verb. And when you engage it, when this association shows up in Washington and shakes hands with members, they remember that. They remember that the association came and sat down with their staff or with their members, that the association came and did a performance on Capitol Hill. All of that makes a big, big difference. And it'll make a difference wherever you are, on whatever state that you're in, because it is a revenue generator. We know that. We can make those arguments. There are just some folks who are just grouchy, grumpy, nasty, don't want to enjoy life, and they will, kick music to the curb. But there are enough of us who understand the value in it, to our economy, to our way of life, to just our well-being, that push back and make things happen. Straw poll. I hate to get political in here. Impeachment, non-impeachment. Don't worry, no one's looking. If you're for impeachment, raise your hand.
Clearing's 200.
Okay. No impeachment.
I'm for getting things done.
All right, and there's a side thing, getting things done. Got it. All right, I'm with you. I'm about getting things done too.
I think I'm getting a little bit fed up with the fighting about that. I'd like to see things progress.
Yeah, I think we're all there. I think we're all there. We want to see progress. It's difficult. It's challenging right now.
Simple way to fix it, just don't re-elect him.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. The other thing is a constitution. You know, there's a rule of law. You let people slide. What happens to that? Then people say, you know what? All music is banned. Anyone who sings gets to go to that camp over there. Anyone who plays a musical instrument. We're collecting every instrument. That's the type of power you give someone when you don't hold them accountable.
I like what Pelosi said. I like let's just put him in jail after all this is. Get rid of him.
It's a quandary.
Yeah.
We're in a very unique space in America, and it's growing pains. This is a young nation compared to many others, but we have to make up our mind. Either we're ride or die. We want our Constitution to mean something. We want the rule of law to mean something, or we open to the whatever happens if it doesn't, right? Show up. I mean, we're speaking on behalf of musicians who we know. Like I open my comments with exploitation, because to me, if your voice is what's selling, it's moving. If your musicianship is what's selling, is what's moving, you should be paid for that. You know, there's no doubt about it. And there are many of us who feel that way on Capitol Hill. And then you have to remember, as all of these radio stations, the smaller ones now, are going into these big conglomerates, they're making profits galore. There's no reason why artists should not be compensated for their work. I'm thinking about diversity.
Right.
And I'm thinking about inclusion. Those smaller stations will tend to be that ground floor
That's very true.
for a lot of those artists. Mhm. All right, I wore out my welcome. Let me thank you all so very much for having me.